All right. It's the final countdown here, guys. We're going out here with the second last episode of the 2021 version of Why I Want. Thank you to those in the third last episode that we did for Brennan Othman, who commented in the comment section below. Sunfire, if you want a chance to be featured in the last video of the series, then stick around to the end of this video over here. But today's episode of Why I Want is going over one of the more underrated defensemen, in my opinion, in the 2021 NHL Entry Draft. We're sticking around here in North America, and we're taking our sights back into the WHL because we have been talking about so many WHLers this season, and instead of going back to Edmonton for the Oil Kings, we're taking our focus onto the Winnipeg Ice. Let's talk today about Carson Lambos. Now, Lambos is a name that you most likely have heard of before, and the reason you've probably heard of him before is because last year, heading into the 2021 NHL season, he was seen by many as one of the top defenseman prospects in this entire draft class. You had the guys like Power, like Clarke, like Hughes, all considered top-of-the-line guys, and you had some other guys that eventually fell off in their draft positions like Aatu, Raty. Carson Lambos is kind of in that same boat, because a year ago, a lot of people said, okay, this Lambos guy could be seen as a top defenseman prospect in this draft, maybe alongside of the Brandt Clarks, maybe the Owen Powers, maybe even the Daniil Chaykas out there. So it is definitely noteworthy to take a look at how draft rankings have changed a year before until now, but even though Carson Lambos isn't considered by many in that same tier as the Clarks and the Hugheses and the Edvinsons, whatever, he still is a capable NHL defenseman prospect that I wanted to talk about here today. So, who exactly is Carson Lambos? Well, he's a 6'1", 201-pound left-handed defenseman born in January of 2003. He's 18 years old, and he made a name for himself last season when playing for the Winnipeg Ice. He scored himself 32 points in 57 games played as a 16 turning 17-year-old defenseman. He made his way known because he was a really good offensive contributor who had some really specific skills on the puck. When he was in the offensive zone, he would very frequently use his lateral mobility, his shiftiness, and his offensive creativity to fake guys out and find open lanes, dash in that way, and then use his pretty potent wrist shot. You won't really see Lambos use a slap shot all too often. He's got a wrister that he's really not afraid to use, and it frequently gets him assists, not to mention goals as well. He was the top U17 defenseman point guy in that league that year, and it wasn't even close. You can see the lead he had on everybody else. Some other names that pop out on this list here, like Owen Zellweger, are going to be also prospects taken in this year's draft too. Lambos' draft -1 was so good, in fact, that if you go over to the all-time U17 defenseman point records in the WHL ever since the year 2000, you can see some pretty interesting names that Lambos outscored during their 16, 17-year-old years in the WHL. Ty Smith, Derek Pouliot, Morgan Riley, Bowen Byram, Matt Dumba, really good defensemen over here. Carson Lambos had himself a better draft -1 than all of these guys point production-wise. Because Carson Lambos had such an impressive 2019-20, as well as a really good performance for the U17s playing with the Canadian White squad, he had himself a pretty good draft stock built up for his draft -1. However, this year, his draft season, he didn't really do all too much in the WHL. He had injuries, so he wasn't really able to play to the best of his ability. He only had 2 games played when the WHL returned, wherein he had 0 points. However, he did sport an A on his sweater. He spent the majority of his time for 2021 in Finland, playing for Jyvaskyla for the main men's club, the U20 club, and the U18 club. He produced 3 assists in 2 games played for the U18s, but for the U20s, this is where the bulk of his production came from. 11 points, 2 goals, and 9 assists in 13 games played, which is honestly pretty good for a draft-eligible prospect making his way over to Finland, being exposed to that style of hockey for the first time in your life, and just getting thrusted in there and saying, okay, we're going to use you on the power play, we're going to put you in all these situations here because we know the talent, the pedigree that you're supposed to have with you. And to be fair, 11 points in 13 games, nothing to scoff at. However, it's a lot more interesting when you think about how exactly this guy had to adapt to a brand new style. It's a common discussion point you'll find with Carson Lambos that even though he did produce really well in the Finnish league this year, he honestly looked a lot better last year, playing in the WHL, smaller ice, and more North American, North-South kind of physical style. Obviously, that's not to say that Lambos didn't succeed in the Finnish Liga or the U20 SM Liga, but it is interesting to note that at the very least, some people are saying that what he was last year projected a little bit better than what he is this year. But to me, that just speaks more to the versatility of his overall game. It's not like his offense completely shriveled up. He still went out there and he still produced against Finnish kids. However, all the other things around his game honestly worked out pretty well too. He still showed off that he's got great gap control and really strong defensive play. He knows what he needs to do in his own zone in order to start breakouts for his team. He's a really good, sound two-way defender that knows how to play the offensive side of the puck, mostly by using his explosivity to exploit new space that he picks out of nowhere. On the defensive side of things, as we noted, he's got a really strong gap control game. It's tough to find this guy giving up pucks defensively, and it's why, in my opinion, even though you would say the offensive side, the offensive spark, wasn't as dominant as it was in the WHL last year, in Finland this year, he still has himself a really good, projectable set of NHL quality skills that I think should lead to him getting drafted somewhere in the first round this year. I really think that Carson Lambos excels both ways, and you wouldn't really be drafting him because you want him to be a number one point-producing offensive defenseman. Sure, the offense was really good last year, but I think this year in particular, we really saw the two-way game come out a little bit more, and we really saw how developed that was. It's why he had 2 games played at the top pro men's level, even though he's only 17 turning 18 years old. So even though he had 2 games played at the league level and he had 0 points, and he had 2 games played at the WHL level this season and he had 0 points, it doesn't really matter this year. The guy had injuries, he had an ablation procedure, which is a pretty big deal, and he seems to have recovered pretty alright from all that. So I'll give him a pass for this year for not producing the lights out in the 2-game sample size he had in the WHL, because he still showed off in the limited sample size he had with Jyvaskyla that he had good qualities to his game. It's why you take a look at where he's ranked. His consolidated ranking is 19th overall. The highest ranking you'll find here on the Elite Prospects website. ISS has him at 16, the Puck Authority has him at 14, the lower ones over here like Elite Prospects have him at number 33. Future Considerations has him at number 29, other scouting outlets like Dauber have him at 31. So he's kind of ranked to go anywhere from the middle of the first round to the end of the first round, and if he slips to round number 2, I personally would be pretty surprised. A 19th overall consolidated ranking is honestly pretty safe for a guy like this, who didn't really produce as much as he would have wanted him to in this year, but who had a really good offensive spark last year and surely displayed the defensive ability this year instead. So if there's an Edmonton team looking for defense out there that wants to draft this guy, hey, be my guest. Honestly, I think it could be a pretty good fit. You have other teams in the late, mid-first round-ish kind of area, somewhere in the 20s like Boston, Minnesota, Detroit maybe even. Columbus, they need defensemen as well. If you're Columbus and you get Brandt, Clarke at number 5 and Carson Lambos at number 24, that could be a really good long-term potential pairing because Clarke could do all the offensive powerlifting, Lambos could do everything else, and also be able to contribute offensively as well. You have a lot of options here if you're going out there thinking about taking this guy anywhere from 15 onwards to the end of the first round. I think he does have a solid top 4 potential ceiling in the NHL. He could be a guy that gets a whole bunch of minutes. He knows how to play off the puck, and he is 6'1", 201 pounds at 18 years old, so he is already a pretty solid frame to boot. If you end up drafting this guy, I think you really have to pay attention to what he does next year in 2021-2022, fully recovered from the ablation procedure he had, and most likely sticking around back in the WHL, playing against kids, and showing off the skills he has. I really wouldn't be surprised if next season Carson Lambos exploded offensively, got back that scoring touch that he had in 2019-20, and really just built on all the other things he had in his game, defending against the rush, using his gap control, and using his lateral mobility to evade pressure. He's got a really interesting profile, and it's why I'm really interested in seeing where his career goes. So talk to me in the comments what you think about Carson Lambos and his entire prospect profile heading into the 2021 NHL Entry Draft. If you made it to the end of this video, then comment in the comment section below Yeti, because he is another Marvel character. It also is the depiction on the Winnipeg Ice's logo, if you hadn't noticed already. That is a Yeti. And also, I mean, I will say this at the end of the video as well, this is the second last episode, so if you want to be featured in what is the very, very last one for 2021, then hey, that's your comment section keyword. We've got one more to do, and it will come at the same schedule 2 days from now, so if you've been watching this Why I Want series here the entire way through, then hey, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for sticking around and keeping up with the prospects here. Also, if you're brand new, hey, let's say Carson Lambos gets drafted into the NHL, and all the fans of the team that just took this guy end up flooding this video, hey, comment in the comment section below. What do you think of him? How do you like him with your new team? I hope you enjoyed this Rosen 99, and bye.